keep going. But yeah, since you listened to the podcast, you already know my first question, which is going to be, what was your call to adventure? What took you from where you were before to doing all the cool things that you're doing now?
Okay. So I guess for me, it all started in 2018. I was 48 at the time, and I was very overweight, and I kept trying to get to the point where I could do something about my weight, but it just couldn't quite click. And weight loss is just a kind of, it's more of a head game than it is anything physical. Once your head has clicked into gear, the magic can begin to happen, but you've just got to get to that point. And but sadly for me, the thing that really got me to that point was when my mum became ill. And I mean, no one can quite believe that she's still going. She's just such a strong woman, but she is really deteriorating now, but we're lucky to still have her at the moment. And it was just a real kind of everything coming together, and I thought, like, oh my God, I'm kind of approaching 50 before I know it, and I'm overweight, and I'm drinking too much, and I'm doing everything that's unhealthy. I'm not moving, and now my mum's ill, and my mum and dad are going to need my help. And I just thought, I've got to sort myself out. So that was just like this big moment, really, where it just all kind of fell into place, and things began to happen. So that set off a weight loss journey. I lost, so I was over 18 stone at that time, lost just about half my body weight, and realised that I needed to start moving. So it's just really simple, sort of half an hour walking after work at first. And I had some friends who were in a fitness group, and they just looked like they were having such a lot of fun, and I really wanted to be doing what they were doing, and I just thought, I just can't face it. I just didn't have confidence really in myself at that time, and obviously a lot of body image issues that come when you've been very overweight. And so it took me a long time to kind of, again, get to the place where I thought, I'm ready to do something about it. But luckily for me, there was a woman called Claire who was running a fitness group at that time that was called Evolve Fit, and it was just absolutely life-changing. And so it just started with PT sessions, and then I got to the point I was happy to go to her classes, and then I joined in with this boot camp, and I was just having such a lot of fun. And it kind of got to a point where it wasn't about dieting and food anymore. It was about wanting to eat healthily, because I wanted to be fitter and I wanted to feel better. So there was just like quite a big change for me there. I mean, I've not done really any exercise since I left school at 16, and to then sort of pick it up at 48 and find a love for it was just, because honestly I just hated it at school. I really did. Just did not like doing anything. If a bus was coming, I would never have run for a bus. So I just was not that sort of person. I'd let the bus go past. And then Claire kind of got us into doing different challenges. So she would get us every year to just kind of have things, goals and aspirations that we were aiming for. And some of them would be very personal, but then we would do things as a group. And she put forward a suggestion that we should all have a go at 10 Van. And at that point, I think I'd been up Pen y Fan once, maybe. And I'd done the horseshoe route, and I thought, I need to try it the other way, because that's what we would have been doing. Obviously, when you're doing Pen y Fan, you do the kind of easier tourist route, if you like. Still very challenging when you're doing it 10 times, though. Yeah. So before I knew it, I'd signed up for that, and then doing lots of training for that, and just constantly up in the mountains, and that really just fired something off in me, where I just thought, like, God, this is what it's all about: being outdoors, being in the fresh air, just the scenery and just that sense of freedom, and then just feeling accomplishments as you're just sort of tackling different mountains. I mean, God, you know, I'm no mountaineer, and you know, I get scared if it's, you know, if there's scree or anything like that, or if I've got to use my hands, and you know, if I'm sort of on all fours, I can't stand that sort of hiking, I guess. But I love being out there, so it doesn't matter what the weather is. You know, just get the right gear and just get out there and make the most of it and enjoy it. And that was just fantastic then for my husband, Mark, because he loves being outside. He's much more athletic than I ever was. And so for me to then suddenly be saying like, oh, you know, let's go out and let's go and do something in the mountains, and was perfect for him. And so it just really helped us with something to do that didn't involve going to the pub, to be honest. So yeah, that was it really. That's kind of what started it all off.
And where's it taken you? Because I've seen like little bits here and there, and Andrew's told me a little bit as well. But I'm sure there's like way more that I don't know.
Yeah, I guess quite soon after all that, I think we ended up in the point where it was the pandemic. And I'd been doing some small scale things, really. I mean, you know, I find it quite hilarious that I'm here doing adventure athletes. It just tickles me, really. Because like one thing that I did, it was really small, but for me it was a really massive thing. And I was learning to ride a bike. Because when I was 9, I had an accident on my bike, and my cousin reminded me a few weeks ago that I'd actually given my bike to her after that accident had happened. I'd concussed myself and had lots of facial injuries from this accident. I just terrified myself then of a bike. And but when the family was kind of going to centre parks and everyone was cycling, and I felt left out because I was A, too scared to do it, and B, too big to do it. And but I got to the point and I thought, no, I'm going to be brave, and I'm going to go off to Bikeability Wales in Swansea. And I think I paid them about 25 quid, and just like a charitable donation, and they had me cycling within about 20 minutes. Yeah, so we were doing a bit of cycling now and again, nothing major, but just enough for me to sort of keep my confidence up on the bike. And something that Mark had always wanted to do was to go skiing, and I just had this fear of falling over, so skiing was not really something I wanted to do. But I thought, you know, this is now about being brave, stepping out of my comfort zone, and just trying things, because you never know, you might like it. So I think we've been skiing twice now. So I'm terrified when I'm doing it, but that's kind of the point. You know, just putting yourself into uncomfortable positions, because if you just do things that make you feel safe all the time, you just don't learn from it and you don't grow from it. So I've become a big believer in just being brave, just take a deep breath and just jump in, both feet first, and just go and do things. So yeah, as I say, quite small scale things to start with. And then as it was during the pandemic, and Claire had said to us, right, it's time to set some new challenges. And I thought, right, I'm going to run a 10K race. I thought, I don't know quite what one I'm going to do. But I thought, I don't know what shoes I should be wearing. I don't know what clothes I should be wearing. I don't even know if I can run. Going back to this bus thing, yeah, I honestly didn't know if I could have run for a bus. So I spoke to a couple of people at work and who I knew were runners, and said to them, look, I think I'm going to have a go at doing a run, and it's just 10K, but to me that you might as well have said I was, you know, doing John O'Groats to Land's End or something. That's how long it felt. But so I spoke to 2 different coaches, and there was I used to work in Cardiff and Vale Health Board, and there was a woman in the comms team there who put me in touch with this guy called Rory Coleman. And Rory is just quite a character, really, and I've got a lot of respect for what he's done and what he's overcome in his life. So he's in his early 60s now, but 30 years ago he decided, he had this kind of wake-up call as well, and he decided that he needed to start running, give up drinking, and just lead a better life and be a better version of himself. And so he's done many hundreds of marathons, ultra marathons, but his thing really is Marathon De Sables. So he's done that, successfully completed that now 17 times. So I was sort of looking at this guy like he had two heads, really, when we met, because I just can't connect with this guy, but actually we did, and there were things that we found between each other that were this common ground, I guess. And he said, I can definitely help you to get running. So he recommended trying some trainers, and then we had a couple of dates set up where we went out together, because I felt so self-conscious, and then he was like, it's about, let's just get the steps up, get the walking up, and then the running will come. And I think the other thing for me with Rory was in 2016, I think it was, he became really gravely ill with Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is a neurological disorder. So he was effectively paralysed, and I'm a nurse. I've nursed many people with Guillain-Barré syndrome, and because of the type of nursing that I was doing in intensive care, the people that I tended to look after didn't survive it. So to me, then seeing somebody who's not only survived it, they've come back running and doing the incredible things that he does was just, and that I think was really where my respect for him came from. And so I've kind of stuck with Rory. So it was during the pandemic, and I thought, right, we had a skiing holiday that was cancelled, and I thought with the refund that was coming, I thought I'm going to invest it in some coaching so I can learn to do this properly, because that I am quite impulsive. So although I jump in 2 feet first, I plan everything to the nth degree. So people always laugh at me and say about, I have planned, like, for anything that I've done. I know what I'm going to be eating, drinking, electrolytes. I know at what point I think I'm going to be at a checkpoint. I've planned it all out. So
that's the complete opposite of me.
I know, I've picked that up.
Yeah, I just rock up, and I'm like, you've probably heard on the podcast, my first ultra I did no training for, and I was like, yeah, this will be fine. I didn't even know there was checkpoints. That wasn't even a thing I was aware of when I signed up. So when I turn up and there's like food laid out, I'm like, oh, this is quite nice, really. Yeah, just complete opposite of you.
Yeah, you would stress me out, you see.
Yeah, it's definitely got its upsides. It's got many more downsides, I would say, such as coming out with injuries and stuff. But you just mitigate them wherever you can. I'm getting better at planning, but I tend to just take on too much. That's my thing. I'm like, oh yeah, there's another thing I want to do.
That I find that as well. There's so much out there that you can do, and my interest gets piqued, and I just sign up for things. So I've got to rein myself back a little bit. So I find like I've joined a couple of running clubs, which has just made a massive difference as well. So I've kind of I can be very disciplined about training. In fact, I probably don't rest enough, but I just, like, on a day like today, it's lovely evening out there. You think the evenings, it's still light, make the most of the weather while we've got it, go out and do something. But I know at the same time, like, I've got a calf injury at the moment that's giving me some Achilles pain as well. So I know I've really got to balance that out. and I'm not so good at that.
It's the hardest thing to do when you're passionate about what you're doing, because like you're saying, like the weather's nice, why not get out? And then it's like, oh, well, I need to rest because I've got this injury, and then it's like, oh, but the weather might not be this good tomorrow. Like I want to get out, and yes, it's tough to manage.
Yeah, totally.
So going from meeting Rory then and signing up with him, you've now gone to Marathon De Sables yourself.
Yeah, that's an example of me being impulsive, crazily impulsive. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people go to Rory for lots of different reasons, really, but clearly he understands the race of Marathon des Sables completely. So he understands how the checkpoints work there, what the sleeping arrangement's going to be like, what you need to carry, just the whole mechanics of it. He completely understands.
Yeah, carry on.
So there were a lot of people in this WhatsApp group who were getting ready to go to MDS when I joined it, and I just found myself reading about it, asking lots of questions, and just had a bit of a spark ignited in me, really. And I think I can also remember back at work, I'd listened to a lecture from a guy who was ex-army, and he'd been out there and done it. And I can remember in this talk where he was talking about sort of leadership and being able to stand on your own 2 feet, and decision making and that kind of stuff. And I can remember the pictures that he was showing of the desert, and I just kind of put that together then with hearing everybody in this MDS group, and I just thought, yeah, I'm going to give it a go. But yeah, I mean, I had a fantastic experience. I really did. It was hard, and I didn't complete it. So the way that it worked at the time was you fly out on the Friday, and you get bussed into the desert. It's about a 6-hour bus journey. You sleep then in this bivouac camp overnight. You have registration day on the Saturday. So you're queuing out in that intense heat all day to get through the registration process. And then you start racing on the Sunday. So that was kind of then like day 3, essentially, in the desert when we're starting up. So day 3, I mean, it was very hot. I didn't find it easy. At some points it was taking me half an hour to do 1 mile, because it's just so oppressive, that heat. It was just, and of course you're carrying everything that you need for the week. You are self-sufficient. The only thing they're giving you is water at the checkpoints and at the end of the day to see you through to checkpoint 1 the following day. And this sort of open-sided tent that you sleep in with 7 other people. But apart from that, you're self-sufficient. So obviously on the first couple of days, your bag's really heavy, which is why Rory's always saying you need to be light and your kit needs to be light. So because it's just really difficult to carry it all. Yeah. So then, on that day 1, I was very relieved to get to the finish point, but I felt okay. But I had a bit of a scare on the first night that we'd arrived there, because there was a sandstorm. So you can get these sort of thermal triggered sandstorms because of the heat and the atmospheric conditions. And I found the sandstorms quite scary. So I learned that you've got to kind of sleep with everything in your sleeping bag if there's any risk that it's going to go flying off. Or you've got to make sure that it's all put away into your backpack, and that's close to you so that you can just hold on to it. But I was sort of bent over, like curled up on the floor, holding on to stuff, and the tent just sort of got pulled up out of the ground, and there was this really big long metal spike that hit me in the face there. So I had to go off to the medical tent, and I was given lots of instructions about when to go back to them, when to stop running if I was having facial pain and that kind of stuff. But I had this corker of a black eye, so it was quite impressive. It got a lot of attention from people anyway, that black eye. And then on the first day of racing, when I got back to my tent, I was, I think I was the 7th back in out of the 8 of us. So one of our tent mates was an 81-year-old guy, Harry, from South Africa, who was an incredible man, and it was a kind of lifelong dream for him to do MDS. But obviously, you know, it was very hard. I mean, I was finding it hard going, and I'm like 30 years younger than him. And every day they were taking him off the course to go to the medical tent to be checked over and to make sure that he was okay. So I was the 7th back in the tent, and the sandstorms were kicking up again, and I saw that there was a problem in the tent opposite me, and there was a woman who was calling for help with one of her tent mates, and I, as I say, I'm a nurse, so I could recognise that there was a serious problem, and we had to resuscitate him. Luckily, he survived, and he was eventually flown on to Paris, and he ended up having heart surgery. But he wasn't the only person to have a cardiac arrest. There was another one, and the next day, when I had my own medical problem, and I saw what it was like in the medical tent. I mean, they were just absolutely overrun with people. There were nearly 1,300 runners, and they were just overwhelmed because people were not coping with the heat. We were just so dehydrated, and it was just a real problem. But I was found unconscious on top of near the top of one of the mountains. So I'm a bit frightened of that mountain now. So we'll have to see what happens, because I have gone a bit mad and signed up to go back. Next April I'm going to give it another go. And I feel a bit torn, because I keep thinking to myself, I just really don't know if this is it's just too big a challenge for me. But I know if I think like that, you kind of, it becomes your destiny, doesn't it? So I'm really trying to work hard on the positive thinking and the visualization of myself achieving that goal. But so we'll have to see.
No, that's quite an experience to go through, and to then sign up to go again. Like, I can only applaud that, because that takes some courage. What do you think's been like the main change for you to have that change in attitude? Because you've gone from someone that's overweight, that's not really exercised, to then not just exercising, going to classes, because that's a big step in itself, to then going to Marathon De Sables and running ultras, and just doing things that now scare you, because like, I can imagine the place you was in before, you wouldn't have taken those steps. No. So like, what's the thing that's helped you change that attitude the most? I
think there's a few things. So people often think that I'm a really confident person, but I wasn't. I have struggled with confidence, and I still struggle with confidence. But I kind of recognise that now, and I try not to give in to when my confidence is lacking. But it's all about brain training, really. And another thing is that I used to be quite pessimistic, quite negative, risk averse. I'd always see the problems in things. And now I've really worked hard on trying not to be that person. And just a simple thing, but I started with just like keeping a little bit of a journal, but it was like a positivity log. And again, it was like a talk we'd had at work about happiness and joy in the workplace. And I was really very skeptical about it, because that's again, just a negative person in me. But I thought, actually, there's something in this. And so I decided, right, every day I'm going to write down one positive thing that's happened. And some days that's been quite difficult to find that positive thing because, like I say, I've got my mum who's got a end of life condition. My dad's got lots of ill health problems. So, we all have stuff going on in our lives, don't we, that is periodically more challenging to deal with. So some days, all I can find to say is that the sun was shining, or I got some ironing done. It's got that bad that, ironing has been seen as being a positive thing. But over the course of time, I've kind of got to the point where I'm thinking I can find more than one thing now. And this guy at work was saying you need 3 things for every negative thing. So every time you've had like a negative experience or negative thought, you've got to find 3 positive things to balance it out. And so I've really focused on that, and that's been really good for me. But it's surrounding yourself with like-minded people has made a big difference. I know some people they can't fathom out how I've gone from that person who did nothing to this person now who's just out there all the time looking for the next thing to do, the next thing that's going to challenge me, and the person who's prepared to step out of my comfort zone, and to be in a place where I'm thinking, oh, what have I done? Because I know I'm gonna get something out of it. It might not go my way, and I'm never going to be a podium winning athlete. No matter what I wish for, that's just never going to happen. But I'm getting something out of it for me, and my family are proud of me for what I am doing, for having kind of sustained the change that I have.
Yeah. It's really refreshing to see, because there's so many people that have just gone their whole lives being one way, and they're just stuck in it and they can't see a way out, and they're like, this is just who I am by now, I can't change it. And they're, like you're saying, they're stuck in that same group around them as well, and that's their influence. So to have actionable steps of, I just kept a positivity journal, and now this is what it's led me to do. And you just find people that are trying to do the same things. I know I've spoken to Andrew in depth about it, and he's like, the people that he's met from coming on the podcast and he's speaking to, he's like, you're all incredible people. And we're like, you're one of us, Andrew. You really are. As much as he doesn't see himself as an adventure athlete, he is through and through. And he inspires us all.
There's so much respect and love for Andrew. He's such a lovely, kind guy, and to watch him where he's been and where he's going, it's just fabulous. And the discipline that he holds himself to, it's just kind of all clicked into place for him. And just good luck to him. I'm loving watching it. It's just fabulous.
Yeah, he's doing really well. But it's just so cool to see both you and him going through this journey and coming out and bettering yourselves. A lot of people will see the podcast and the sort of guests we have on, and they're like, oh, they're just built to do that. That's what they do. People assume it about me because I've been doing it for so long myself. They're like, oh, but that's just you. You're just gifted like that. And for me, I can see my journey, and I'm like, I'm not gifted. I was this really skinny kid. I hated exercise. It was the worst thing in my head. But I found a love for it through doing different sports and things that I then started to find enjoyable. And from the age of 15 onwards, I was just obsessed with fitness. But that's still quite early to get into it. But if you asked anyone that I went to school with before I was 15, I was the least likely person to be be doing what I'm doing now. I was like the kid that went to the library during lunch times to do his homework because he didn't want to go out and play football with everyone else. I was the kid that avoided climbing trees because I was scared. Like, my dad used to put me on a tree and I'd just hug the trunk while him and my brother climbed up. And I couldn't think of anything worse than doing physical activity, and now I'm trying to do world records, and it's a big dichotomy. But then, yeah, people that now meet me, they're like, you've just always been like that. So it's nicer to see people that have gone through life not being like that, making a change to show it is possible for everyone.
It's absolutely possible. It really is. And you've just got to find the thing that you like doing. And there are things, even as I say, for people like me who I didn't like doing anything. I did not like exercise, but I just maintain now that they offered us the wrong kinds of exercise in school, like running around an athletics track when you're a teenage girl, and they're expecting you to run in sort of, little vests and gym knickers when you're sort of at that teenage stage in your life and you're self-conscious anyway, and when you're already holding extra weight, it just destroys your confidence. So when you get to the point you think, I can now make my own choices, and my choice is not to do it, and I just think it's just terrible because it just turned me off a life of exercise. So I kind of feel like I've lost decades. But, you can't turn back the clock. You've just got to learn from it. But it's definitely having the right people around you is absolutely critical. And I was so scared of kind of feeling ridiculed in exercise classes or whatever. And I just thought, I'm just going to have to be brave with this PT and go into the gym and stuff like that. I mean, I can remember the first session with her, and she had to help me down on the floor and back up again for some warm-up exercise we were doing. I mean, I'm so embarrassed that I let myself get to that stage, but then I think there's no point being embarrassed now, and now it's gone, isn't it? I just need to make sure I don't go back there.
Yeah. It reminds me a quote that I heard Kipchoge say about the best time to plant a tree is 25 years ago. The second best time is now.
That's so true.
Yeah, like you can always look back and be like, oh, well, what if I'd started earlier? But then really, like, you just got to get started now. Like, you can't do anything about it.
Yeah, and you've just got to get over yourself a little bit, and you've just got to be prepared to think, like, if other people are looking at me, let them look. At least I'm there giving it a go. And if they're the sort of people that are making me feel uncomfortable, well, I just won't go to the gym at that time when I think they're going to be there, or I won't go to that class when I think they're going to be there, or I won't go to that running group on that particular day because that group of people is there. So, there's ways around it, but you've just got to have courage.
Yeah. What other things have you implemented then, other than exercise, that's helped you with your weight loss and confidence and stuff?
I suppose work has been a big part of that. And again, I guess around the pandemic and just sort of everything changed. I had a new job. I've been in a few different roles since the pandemic, and that has changed my working patterns quite a bit. So that's made me really think about work-life balance a lot more. Partly because I need to think about things with my mum and dad. My daughter's grown up now. I've got a 23-year-old daughter, Laura. And so sort of years ago when she was in school and I'm sort of worrying about her homework and her achievements and what she's doing, and worrying about my husband, worrying about the house, just worrying about everything apart from me. And then, you just think, like, where have I gone? I don't even know who I am anymore. So getting to the point where I had different roles in work was definitely beneficial, because it was just like a bit of a system reset, and the extreme conditions that we had because of the pandemic were probably quite helpful for me around that. But I was very lucky, obviously in healthcare we kept working. I didn't have the difficulties that other people have had with work and being furloughed and all that kind of stuff. Another big change for me has been to stop drinking. So when I get an idea in my head, once it's clicked, that's it. That's the path I'm on. So again, I was just kind of influenced by these people in this MDS group, and they were just wanting to kind of make themselves indestructible, I guess, so that they can get through the extreme nature of the desert. And so, I mean, not everybody has stopped drinking by any stretch of the imagination, but it was kind of a realization for me that previously I was drinking too much, using it as a bit of a crutch. And then I was just thinking to myself, I don't really know why I'm doing it anymore, because I can break this habit. It's become a habit, and I can break this. So in 2022, I just had sort of a drink on my birthday, my husband's birthday, and Christmas. And then I thought at Christmas, right, I'm going to have a year and see how I do with a year off the alcohol. And then last Christmas, everyone was like, you're going to have a drink on Christmas Day. And I was like, actually, no, because now I don't want to spoil the streak.
Yeah. Once you're like that deep into something, it's like the new achievement is just keeping it going. I did a thing where I took a year off social media, and it was so hard for me to get back on, because I was like, I don't want to ruin it now. Like, yeah. I've built this new habit, this new routine, and I don't want to go back. But then as soon as I went back, like, it does quite quickly deteriorate, and it's like, oh, now I am like back to doom scrolling. It's just so addictive.
Yeah. It's a bit of a wicked problem.
Same with drinking, is like people give it up, and then as soon as you have that one moment of like, oh, I'm just going to have one drink, then it can quite easily just be like, okay, like I've had that one drink, I was fine. A few weeks pass, and it's like, I can have another one, and then before you know it, you're back to it.
Yeah, but I think it's a real mindset thing as well. So I try not to think like I'm giving it up, because that immediately sort of makes my subconscious start thinking like, oh, that must mean I'm missing out on something because I'm giving it up. So now I try to think of it like I've made a choice and I choose not to drink. So that's like, I feel empowered because my choice is not to have a drink. So that's like a completely different way of looking at it. So I always try and sort of get to that point. It's like when I'm out on a run, if I don't go fast by any stretch of the imagination, but I keep going. And that's what people know me for, that no matter how many times I'm getting on the struggle bus, I can get myself back off it, and I can just turn it around and think like, yeah, my feet might be hurting, I might be hungry, I might be tired, but I'm out here, I'm doing it. A couple of years ago, I could not do this, and I will find something around me that is more positive to focus on. So if I'm with a group of people and they're sort of sapping the energy out of it, I will have to put some distance between myself, because otherwise I find myself, you just get drawn into it, don't you? So I just try to really focus on what am I getting out of this, because there will be something, no matter how hard and how bad it is. And that might be the lesson in itself, that you can do hard things.
Yeah, I think that really sums up what you've been talking about that mindset shift. Even just the way you said about how you're wording it to yourself, I choose not to drink. It's so powerful. Like, just what you say to yourself and how that then impacts your actions and your attitude is something that's massively underrated. Reflecting on it now, I realise I'm probably on the negative side of that spectrum, and that's something I need to implement more in my life, but it is extremely powerful.
Yeah. I have underestimated that in time. It's taken me a long time to understand the power of the mind.
Yeah. How do you then use that to get through that dark time? I know you're saying you're trying to find the positives constantly, but when you are in pain and you're thinking like, it's wet, it's cold, my feet hurt, I've got blisters, I've still got another like 20 miles to run. Like, how do you find that switch to keep going?
I think it's discipline, and it's not wanting to give up. So it's like even at MDS, for example, they medically retired me. I was found, unconscious on top of this mountain. Someone pressed my SOS buzzer, and I had to have a lot of IV fluids and be actively cooled. But once that had happened, I felt great. So when they told me then, like, you've got to go over to that tent for processing, I thought, processing for what? I had no idea what was happening. So when they told me that it was to process my medical retirement from the race, I was just absolutely distraught, because I thought I had it in me to keep going, and they were like, no, once you've been that unwell with the heat, it's just reckless to carry on. But I never want to give up. If someone else is telling me I have to give up, I won't say graciously accept it, because I find it hard to accept. But I can find the discipline within me to keep going.
Yeah, it's a hard choice to make, to give up. Sometimes it's the right choice, but accepting it and finding that boundary for yourself is a hard pill to swallow. But that's not to say that that's your limit. That's your limit at that moment, but there's no reason why it can't be moved, which I think you're going to demonstrate by going back to the MDS.
Yeah. I learnt from one of the women who runs with Run Newport and Liz Werry runners, Lisa, her name is, and she's a fantastic runner. And she always says that something she does when she's finding the run hard is she just does a bit of a sort of mental check-in, but she sort of really focuses in on what's happening in her body, and she sort of thinks like, just sort of working systematically through her body. Is it hurting? Is it something I can do something about? Am I cold? Am I wet? Do I need to put fresh clothes on? Have I got hot spots on my feet? Is it hunger? Is it thirst? And she really sort of has that mind-body connection. And then she's like, sometimes there's nothing, and she just says to herself, right, sort yourself out, Lisa. There's absolutely nothing wrong with you, and just move it. But if there is something that's physical, it's then, right, is this something I can do something about, or have I got a problem? And I found that a really useful thing. And the mind-body connection, I think, is really important.
Yeah, definitely. That's something I used to struggle with a lot myself. My first ultra, I tore my hip flexor at mile 6, and I had 26 more miles to go. And it was just like, oh no, I'm like resilient, I can push through this. Watched a lot of David Goggins at that point, and I was like, yeah, like, it's just an injury, it doesn't matter, and you just push through. And then it's like, oh, now I can't walk for a few weeks. And it's like, maybe it would have been a good idea for me to stop. Maybe that's where the mental strength comes in. Isn't always about pushing on, but knowing when to stop. And yeah, I felt this is how I'm trying to process my Thai marathon. Is I stopped at mile 6 because I felt my arm go, and stopping at the time, like, anyone that was there will tell you that I was absolutely distraught, as you probably were at MDS.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't want to give up, but then at the same time I was like, that is a serious pain. And then the day after I was like, Yeah, it's an actual injury. Like, I can't move my arm. That was the right call.
Absolutely.
But at the time, it's so hard to see that.
It's just all that training that you've done, isn't it? And just watching that goal slip away, and it's so hard. And there's a difference, isn't it, to when it happens at mile 6 or mile 26, and you think, yeah, can I just keep going? Is it the right thing to do? And you're so right. Sometimes knowing when to stop is just absolutely crucial.
Yeah. So what's the longest race you've done then? Because you've done a few ultras now.
Yeah. So I've done, the ultras just suit me perfectly because, again, I can keep going. If they don't have cut-offs, I love it even more because I'll take my time. I'll take pictures if I want to take pictures. If I want to sit down for 10 minutes and change socks and shoes and things like that, that's what I'll do. And it's just a completely different pressure to a road marathon. Yeah. So I've done a few ultras. God, it's getting to the point I can't even recall them all. Isn't that crazy? Some of the interesting ones I've done have been track events. So I did some crewing support for Jen Coleman, who's Rory Coleman's wife. So she has been selected for Team GB on a number of occasions. So she's super fast, and I just look at her in awe. And but she's it's a natural thing for her. And I was crewing for her at the Barry 40, so it's a 40-mile race around Jenner Stadium in Barry. So I can't think, is it 167 laps or something like that? And I found it really quite stressful. I was doing it with another guy, and so we were they don't have chip timers on, so you're manually writing down the times, and we had instructions about when she would want drinks, gels, food, new batteries for ear pods and that sort of thing. And she was so fast that I'd barely torn open a gel, and I was having to work out what time the last lap was. And she literally runs twice as fast as me. But just watching all these runners going around, and I thought, how do you get into the headspace of running around a track? And so then I thought, all right, I'm going to look for a track race now. So I've done 2. I've done one in Manchester and one in Telford. So one was, in fact, I've done 3. 2 in Manchester, 1 in Telford. So one was a 6-hour event, one was a marathon around a track, and then I did a 12-hour track event just to see how many laps I could do. And it's easier because you've got your kit every 400 meters. So you've got all the food you want, all the drinks. You can change kit as many times as you want because you just don't have to carry anything. But for that's the mental discipline of just, here I am on that damn bit of track again. So that was mentally harder. But some of the ultras that I've done have just been fun. I've done Race to the Stones twice, although I think the second time probably wasn't that fun because I fell over quite a few times, and after a while that's not so much fun. I've done the Druids, which is along the Ridgeway, so that's 90 kilometres I think it is, over 3 days, and so that was part of training for MDS. So it's just the back-to-back running, bit of a kit check, but that's obviously in November, so it was very different to desert conditions. And then a few weeks ago, I was running with Andrew and 2 of the other women who run with Run Newport, so that's Lauren and Claire, and we took part in the Edam race. So that was the longest distance that I've done, longest time as well. It took us a long time.
Yeah. How did that go?
For me, surprisingly well, I thought, actually. I needed to complete it for a confidence boost. So I wasn't bothered about how long it took me. I just needed to know I could get to the end. So again, when other people were sort of finding that they were cold and tired and finding it difficult, I just thought I just need to go a little bit ahead now, because I cannot stop. I cannot not finish this race. I have to do it. So the navigation was fine. We had the odd wrong turn here and there, and it wasn't easy terrain. I didn't find how people run on it. I don't know, because it's like ferns that are up to your thighs and quite unsteady ground in parts that I just don't feel confident running on. But the checkpoints and the volunteers, it's just so fabulously well organised and supported. So yeah, it was fun. I was very pleased with my kit. I was very pleased with all my food choices, my electrolytes. And Andrew was laughing at me actually, because I had it on my phone, this sort of best case scenario, worst case scenario, and a reasonable estimate of where I think I'm going to be. So literally I'm sort of working out miles per hour, where are the checkpoints, what time do I think I'm going to be at that checkpoint. And we had a few problems that meant we fell a little bit behind. So for the first sort of half of the race, we were like on my best case scenario, but then we dropped down between my reasonable and worst case. But as I say, we had a few problems to contend with along the way, but we finished it, and that's what it was all about. So yeah, chuffed with it.
Yeah. Reese is very well known for putting together a good event. I've heard so many good things about their checkpoints, which I'm going to find out on Saturday.
Oh, you're doing the rhythm.
Yeah. So that's going to be interesting. Yeah, I don't know how it's going to go with my arm, but I haven't tried running yet. So we'll find out Saturday. I'm going to take my sling with me just in case, but yeah, I'm hoping I'll just be able to push through on that one. But yeah, I still can't, like, recently it's clicked with me how long 50 miles is, because even as a runner, like, I don't think I've ever fully comprehended it, like up until a few weeks ago when I was talking with someone called Naomi, who's run like 200 milers and stuff, and the way she was explaining it to me, and it finally clicked, like, oh, that's a long way. And I was thinking, like, I've always wanted to run 100 miler. Like, that was my goal when I signed up to start running. I was like, yeah, I'm going to do 100 miler. And I keep thinking about it, and the furthest I've done so far is 50k, so quite a way off 100 miles. And I'm now looking at it being like, wow, 100 miles is far. Like, that's a good few days. And then I'm like, 50 miles is really far as well. And the amount of people I now know that have done 50 miles, and I'm blown away by it even more now, because I'm like, that is an incredible distance.
Yeah, when we were sort of getting ready for it, it was quite overwhelming, just thinking like, oh my goodness, this is such a long way. And again, I don't know if I was sort of feeling more pressure because that's kind of the distance that you do on the long day at MDS. So for me, I was thinking, like, if I can't do it in this country, I'm not going to be able to do it in the desert. So now that I have done it, and I put that down to my planning really, and just keeping on top of the food and the fluids and the electrolytes, it just made such a big difference. And I think I've just tested so many trainers and socks and just combinations of everything. So for every long run, something I learned from Rory, I keep a record of all the marathons and ultras that I've done. So I write down what the route was. I love a spreadsheet. I've got a lot of them. My husband's constantly taking the mickey out of me for it. But I write down what I'm wearing, what the weather was like, how easy did I find the terrain, who I was with, because I even see patterns emerging with people that I'm running with. and I can now begin to predict the things that are going to go well and go a bit off kilter depending on who I'm running with. But I've kind of worked out now what combination of socks and trainers works for me, what sports bras to wear, what backpack is best for me to wear, just all these little things. It just, being able to work out the combinations has given me a lot of knowledge, which has just kind of translated itself into better performance.
Yeah. The coach in me is like fascinated by that, and I'm like, oh, that's so exciting that like there's people out there that can do that. But then like the athlete in me is like, I can't think of anything worse to do than spend the time figuring out all those combinations. Like I said, I'm the person that I'll run in anything. Like I've turned up to runs and I've been like, oh, I forgot to bring my shorts today, so I'm in jeans and like just flat trainers, like not even running shoes, and everyone's just like, oh, you're running in that? I'm like, oh yeah, it's what I've got on me. I think part of that has come from when I was in the fire service, and it's like you just got to be ready for anything at any time. So it's like no matter what you're wearing, like if my buzzer went off, I had to jump on my bike and head to the fire station. It's like I don't have a chance to be like, oh, let me just get my uniform out the closet and put that on and then I'll be down. It was like, no, whatever you're wearing, like middle of the shower, buzzer goes off, it's like, oh, quick, throw whatever's on the floor on and get out the door.
Yeah, I wouldn't cope in yeah, that's why I'm not a firewoman.
Yeah, it's very different how I approach my training to how I coach, because I'm very, like with you, I love a spreadsheet when I'm coaching, and I've got a spreadsheet for every athlete and the amount of tabs. Half the athletes don't use like all of the tabs. They're like, oh, I'll use the bare minimum, like I hate doing this. And on one side I'm like, I understand because I'm that as an athlete, but on the other side it makes my job really hard as a coach, so can you just please fill it all out? Yeah. So if I had a client like you, I'd be like over the moon. I'm like, they're going above and beyond with this. But yeah, I'm too hypocritical. I couldn't do it myself.
Oh, I love it. After I've been on a long run, like the next day I make sure I've set aside some time so I can get the laptop out and start filling it all in and start analysing it and think, oh, that didn't work.
Yeah. I had a coach for the tyre flip challenge, and he came the day before to just like make sure he was here. He lives like the other side of London, so for him to come down and be there for the event was amazing. And he rocked up, and the first thing he said is like, oh, where's your supply stocks for the event? Like, I want to look through it. And I was like, oh, they're just on the box on the floor there. And he was like, oh, right, okay. And he started looking through it, and then he was like, oh, so you've got these electrolyte tabs? I was like, yeah, you told me to get some. He was like, how many do you get? And he was holding up one of the tubes, and I was like, oh, that's it. He was like, you've got one tube of electrolytes for your tyre flip, which was looking at like 48 hours. I was like, what? Yeah, do I need more? He was like, I can't believe you. You are awful. But I'm that oblivious to it when it comes to training.
See, yeah, I have found the electrolytes have made a big difference to me. Yeah. A really big difference. Yeah.
In what way?
I don't suffer with cramps, but I know when I've done things, again, because I've got my spreadsheet, and I can look back and I think like when I didn't really understand what I was doing, and then when I was sort of preparing for MDS and I just didn't want to leave things to chance. So I thought if something's within my control, I need to control it. So I did things like precision hydration. I had a sweat test with them, and had sort of calculations around how much fluid I'd be losing and what to replace. And so when I'm looking back now at races sort of a long time ago, relatively speaking, I can see like where I'm feeling nauseous and headachy, and where I can't face the food, but I've left it too late, and I'm sort of been writing down, I was so hungry but I couldn't eat, I just couldn't stomach it. And I think like I basically start eating within the first half an hour, which, you know, for someone who's got to watch their weight, yeah, I do have to be careful, because I can literally overeat on an ultra. So yeah, I do have to watch it. But I know now what's gonna work for me, and I've understood the value of the electrolytes.
Yeah. Speaking as a coach, I feel like a lot of people undervalue the understanding of their body and knowing what it responds well to. Again, I'm saying that completely hypocritically, because I'm one that struggles eating when training. I have been getting better at it this year, but it's something I know I need to work a lot on.
Yeah.
But yeah, like turning up to my first ultra and then going back a few years later to do the same one, and neither time bringing any food with me apart from I came up with a workaround in my head, because I didn't want to bring food, where they were like, you have to bring a certain amount of calories, and I just brought a jar of peanut butter. I was like, that's the calories, that's fine. So if they check my kit, I've technically got the amount, but I know I'm not going to eat it. It was just to get me out of that situation. And yeah, looking back at that, like as a coach now, I'm like, if one of my athletes did that, I would not be happy. So I need to start taking my own advice with that. But
yeah. And you've got to train for it, haven't you? And just try lots of different things. And race day is definitely not the time to do that.
No.
And I find like when I've done the track events, fluids, and I sort of alternate with Lucozade and electrolytes in water, and gels and fruit pastels, and that's kind of enough to keep me ticking over. And on the track events, I've not really enjoyed having food, but put me out on the trails and I'm just absolutely ravenous. And then a gel, I don't even look at them. I don't really take them. I'll take a couple, but I don't really have them. I'd rather have food then.
yeah, I've heard a lot of people recently saying that they're stepping away from gels, and they crave proper food, especially doing trails and stuff. I don't know what it is about the trails, but it just, yeah, it does make you want to eat. I can't stomach it. I'm gonna try and do better this weekend though. I've heard such good things about the checkpoints. I don't think I can't not eat.
Yeah, they had there was lots of fruit, and lots of cake. There was a lot of cake, and yeah, just now and again being able to have a cup of tea was just fabulous. That makes a real difference sometimes.
For people that are listening that aren't runners, they're gonna be like mind blown about stopping to have tea and cake on a race, and it's just like, what is going on in these races? But that's ultras.
Yeah, and a toothbrush. I have to take a toothbrush. That I'm well known for. Anything that you do not expect someone to have in a kit bag is toothbrush and toothpaste, but you'll find it in mine.
Yeah, is that just for the longer events or?
For an ultra, or anything out on the trails, I'll take a toothbrush, because you just feel amazing, just so refreshed after you've brushed your teeth.
Yeah.
I just find it amazing. I just feel so revived after I've brushed my teeth.
Yeah, it's like something as simple as like changing your clothes or your shoes halfway through a race, and you could feel completely defeated, and then you change that, and it's like you're a new person. You're like, oh, I feel fresh again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I really noticed that at the Edam a few weeks ago, actually, because we had our drop bags at checkpoint 3, which was about, I think, 23 miles or something like that. And so we were there a little bit early in the day, really thinking about how long we still had to go, and thinking like, now I need to get the head torch out, need to think about gloves, hat, jacket, and that kind of thing. And I thought, it still feels quite warm out, but I think I'm going to benefit from putting some leggings on and just making sure I have changed. So I did a complete kit change behind some portaloos that were on the roadside there, and brushed my teeth, had a cup of tea, felt fabulous when we set off. But not everybody did, and so they got colder then as we ended up walking into the night, but I felt great. I mean, I was tired at the end, obviously, because it's a long way. But I thought the difference between that and MDS, where you just basically hoping that your one kit from day one to the end is going to see you through, that's quite hard to get your head around, to think that you can't even take a little bit of comfort from changing your socks.
Yeah. So what would be like your biggest piece of advice for people that are looking to make a change in their lives? Like they've got to a point and they're looking at themselves, they're not happy with like how they look or how they feel. What would be your biggest piece of advice to get them through that initial start to change?
I would say just focusing on the positives. So no matter how bad your circumstances, you can train yourself to think differently and to build up that belief in yourself and your courage. But it's like physical training, you've got to work at that, you've got to put effort into it, and it's exactly the same with your emotions and with that psychological aspect of this. It doesn't just happen. You have to work at it, and it requires as much effort, if not more in some ways, than the physical training.
Yeah. What's next for you then, other than the MDS next year? Have you got any other events lined up?
I'm doing the Snowdon Marathon in October. So I've just kind of planned a few events now to just keep me ticking over, and testing kit really, and just make sure the legs are getting some hill work in. So again, I'm not too worried about speed, because I know that I will be doing a lot of walking at MDS. So making sure that I'm hiking over the winter period and that kind of stuff is going to be really important. I will probably go back and do the Druids event, so that's that 90 kilometres over 3 days, because that's that back-to-back training is really good. I'll have to have a look, I think, at the Canham event, and whether I'll have to make a judgment whether that's a bit close to MDS or whether that's like a good last long outing to do. So I haven't checked the dates for that for next year, but that's on my mind, that that might be one that I do.
Amazing. Right. If people want to find you online, where can they find you?
So I'm on Instagram, what Maria does next, with _ in between the words. So I don't post prolifically, but I remember now and again to do something. I sort of do little monthly catch-ups just to remind myself of what I've been out there doing.
And the last question I ask every guest is, if you could set a challenge for the listener for the week, what would it be?
Challenge for the week. So keep a positivity journal. One thing a day, one positive thing a day. Find it, write it down.
Amazing. I definitely encourage everyone listening to take part in that, and I'm going to be starting that today.
Check it. I'll check you do.
Yeah, I will do. Even if I have to post it to my story so everyone knows that I'm doing it.
Good idea.
Yeah, I'm going to do it. Well, thank you for your time, and thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.